This video is sponsored by Private Internet Access VPN. Whether you use the internet to stream, torrent, or just browse, Private Internet Access will help you block malware and trackers while unblocking content. Sign up today using the link below. What's up, everybody? Another edition of the Tong Talks. We always got to bring kind of the biggest voices, the names that matter. I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on you, John, but Jon Rettinger here in the house. What's up, buddy?
What's going on? Dude, I hardly recognize you.
Okay.
The icon is gone.
Okay. I you know, we didn't even talk about this. So you are the first to get the BT hair exclusive. I didn't get a haircut for 4 months. Now, I don't expect you to watch all my videos. I don't expect anyone to, but if you saw them, it was getting a little crazy. It was like a Wolverine mop on top.
I always figured that was like Rasheed Wallace. That was just part of your hair. I guess. Wow. I guess not.
Hey, you know, I mean, there's some baby remnants, but I'm bringing. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna roll with this. To me, I miss it. My mom misses it. My girlfriend misses it. But these are different times right now.
Listen,
right?
Different drastic times call for drastic measures. Drastic hair measures. I would say.
Wait, I felt like your beard was way longer than I'm seeing right now. I feel like you cleaned up a little too.
I trimmed it, my friend. Per request from my wife.
That's what I'm saying, right? Exactly. My girlfriend's the one that said, "Hey, I'm gonna set you with my hairdresser since you refuse to get your hair cut by anyone else." Because I have a person, right, that does it, but you know, times are different. So, anyways, Jon Rettinger here in the house. Thank you so much for coming. We're gonna talk obviously about some Apple stuff. We're also gonna talk about what you've been up to lately. But for people that may not, know who you are, or may not familiar with your stuff, maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of something to make you talk about yourself.
Happy to. First, it's nice to see you. Last time I saw you, I was yelling your name through a parking lot on the way to a Samsung store. I was parking just at a mall in LA. I was like, "It's Brian Tong." I screamed out the window as I'm driving by, parked, and texted you immediately. So it's nice to actually see you.
Good to see you, bro. Yeah.
So I'm a dude on the internet. I've got a YouTube channel with the horrible name John for Lakers. It was my AAM screen name from high school, and now I've just leaned into it. I also ran a website for a long time called Techno Buffalo that I sold about a year and a half ago. I now focus, videos kind of always my passion and love, and that's what I've been doing.
Amazing. Yeah, but I think what I love about you is that I can feel the passion in everything you do, which is important. And I think that is important to this community, which is passionate about this stuff. And that's why, it's kind of crazy. We go pretty far back. I remember actually, I don't know if you remember this, but I think the first time we met, I believe the actual first time we met, you would come to the stage at CES where I used to work at. And that was the first time we actually got to see each other in the living flesh. And, of course. Yeah, you always do, right?
Yeah, that was years ago. It's probably about, 8 years ago at this point.
It's got to be at least. So it's really cool that, now for me, going independent and, thanks to you and others, just really embracing my kind of crossover from, I guess, publication to indie, whereas you've been, in a way, a lot of everything. Like
I've been all over. I've seen some things. I've seen some things. And of which I should say that to anybody who's watching, and Brian, for you, I'm an open book. So any questions, no matter how specific, that you think people might want to know, feel free to ask.
We will. Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk some Apple stuff, because we'll talk about that first, because we know we all want to talk about it. Then we're going to really kind of talk about those specific. You said specific questions. I'm going to get real specific, so you better be careful. You better be careful, man. Okay, so obviously people now have the betas in their hands. They've been playing around with different things, iOS, Mac OS, iPad OS. I have not put watch OS on my phone yet, but let's just kind of start there. Of that kind of mismatch of stuff, you've been playing with it. What are you enjoying the most right now?
I mean, so first, I feel like widgets on the home screen was something that, every year, if you hold an umbrella outside in the rain every day and you say it's going to rain, one day you'll be right. And so I've been saying widgets are coming to iOS since iOS 10. So this year, I'm saying I was right. So I've been using beta 1, and first of all, it's surprisingly stable. I never recommend anybody install a beta on your regular phone, but I did, and it's been pretty good. I've had no app issues unless you play Pokemon Go, in which case do not install the beta. But seeing
There's a Pokemon Go issue with the beta.
not work.
Didn't know that.
Shout out to Twitter for letting me know that. So the widgets work really well. It's very reminiscent of live tiles from Windows Phone, how they're sort of rescalable and sizable and sort of how they're constantly refreshing. But it's a really clean implementation. And I know the first argument people make is Apple copied Android. Actually, Apple had widgets first.
Dashboard, baby. Dashboard, right? Is that technically
Dating back to dashboard if we want to get specific. But the implementation is really good. It's clean. It's new muscle memory to sort of learn how to do things. I will say one of the best things, though, so I use the Pro Max. If you want to get the bigger phone and you want to be able to reach the icons, put a big old widget at top, pushes those icons right down. Suddenly you don't need, like, reachability issues. So there's a pro tip.
power user tip right there, bro.
Power user tip right there. I haven't tried iPad OS 14, and I have not tried Watch OS yet, but at least iOS 14 looks really promising.
Yeah, I think that for all of us that have had, I put the beta on, not on my primary phone, but just kind of my secondary, the 10R, and it still works. Like, it's fine, but I was really impressed with just how smooth overall it works. The reason why I don't put it on my daily driver is because I've had many times where I did that, and then I have specific apps that I use to do the creator stuff we do, and when it doesn't work, I'm like, why did you do that, you stupid fool? But I think, once everyone gets this in their hands, and even though, widgets or not, wherever you stand on that, if you're like hating on or not, I think people are going to love iOS 14. I mean, I've already been just goofing around with it. It looks clean. It looks nice. Even the app library, I deliberately deleted some pages to see how much I would actually use it. And I don't know if I'm going to use it all the time, but it does come in handy. And I think there's going to be a certain group of people that are absolutely going to use that as well.
No, I agree. And I do think there are things that are missing from it, especially when you look at what's allegedly going to be for the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro, whatever they call it, going up to a big 6.7-inch screen. So I still love the ability to place icons where I want them. I thought that was going to be an iOS 14 thing if I just want to put like an icon on the bottom left-hand corner. I still can't do that with iOS. There's still a lot of very simple things that Apple is not allowing you to do. And as they sort of get Android-like, they're still very Apple-like in how they go about things.
Hey, have you played with the that back tap feature yet? Have you played
with
that?
So back. I don't know how that works. First of all, cannot figure out how that works. But it's, for those of you that are wondering, if you install the beta, you go to accessibility, and there's something called back tap, and you can actually tap the back of your phone. I mean, I've got it right here. You tap the back of your phone twice to trigger an action, or 3 times to trigger an action, and you can make it launch Google Assistant if you want to, which is like, the squeeze feature that I loved on the Pixel 4, is awesome. I am getting a lot of accidental double taps, though, so skip that. Go for the triple tap that, and you are off and rolling.
Yeah, what's cool for people that don't know about it also is when you set it up, you have options. It can do things from just launching Control Center. If you have a bigger phone, you don't want to use a second hand to swipe to the top. You can do things like launch Siri with it, but also shortcuts. Like what John's talking about is if you create or get access to the shortcut app, and then you can build different types of shortcuts. One of them gives you the ability to just launch the assistant. Then you map that double tap or that triple tap to the Hey Google, or for me, I put up my playlist for BTS songs. That's my triple tap, and my double tap is Hey Google. But you can do whatever. You can really that's what's crazy. It's going to actually encourage people to play around with shortcuts, because when shortcuts first came out, I don't know about you, played around with a little, made a couple, and then I stopped.
Yeah, I forgot about him completely. Completely forgot about him. It's a really cool feature. I'm surprised how buried it is in accessibility. I think that would be sort of like a feature I would have announced.
Totally, right?
Yeah, but I imagine it's going to get better, more sensitive. Oh, I would like to know how it works. Obviously, isn't a touch panel on the back here. It's probably something with the gyroscope
or getting knocked, exactly. Just getting knocked around. Were there any things from the keynote overall for you that you liked the most, or things that for you you're like, what, I'm gonna do that every day, or I'm really excited about this aspect?
Yeah, so widgets for me was a big one. That was probably the flagship for everybody, right? Widgets were huge. I love being able to see my calendar just right there on my home screen. That was giant. I will say, though, as happy as I was with that, also the disappointing side with no hardware. And we really have to hear about these Apple Tile things for now another like 5 months to actually come out. I mean, like
how many AirTags? Everything you need to know.
I mean, like at this point, we could pretty much pre-record the launch video for it. The move to ARM is interesting. The move to ARM is very interesting.
Very interesting.
And it opens up things that Apple couldn't do before. So, you know, if you look at when Apple switched to about 15 years ago from PowerPC to Intel, a few years later, we got the very first MacBook Air, right? Sure, it was a laptop design, but it was a brand new form factor being so thin we had never seen before. That form factor was not possible with a PowerPC architecture. I think we're going to see something as drastic in new form factors that we've never seen before that wasn't possible with the Intel architecture. I don't know if it's a hybrid iPad or something different. A truly fanless MacBook Pro, like you know, that can run Final Cut, 3 streams of 4K. We're gonna see some really cool things happen, but it's gonna be just a disaster, I think, for the next like 18 to 24 months. Like, it's a total disaster. I don't care how good their emulation software is. Can I swear?
You can say whatever you want, my man.
It's going to be a shit show. It is going to be an absolute disaster shit show with developers. So sit back, relax, and be prepared for that.
I think if the person it won't be a shit show for, though, is my mom, who will only use web browsing, email, and photos. She's going to be okay.
Oh, she'd be like, this new MacBook is awesome. Why does my battery last 24 hours?
This thing lasts forever. You know, you made a good point about new form factors and what they're going to do. You know, we see macOS, I like to call it Big Sur. So we got macOS Big Sur. And man, when I look at that thing, it's asking me to reach out and touch someone. I mean, even when you see some of the settings, you're like, that little button slider is not for a mouse. That's for my finger. Even if you just increase the font size a little bit or the icon size, you're like, this thing is ready to touch. Did you have any feelings like seeing it, even whether you've used it or not? Just this, and we're not saying they're going to do it right away, but they're planting the seeds.
Like mid keynote, actually, I think I tweeted that like Big Sur looks like it was made for a touchscreen. And I believe the quote from Tim Cook was that OS 10 and iOS, and there was no iPadOS at the time, would never merge. And then if I remember correctly, that was a quote. And they were true. But we're actually on iOS 11 now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe that's the thing that gets them together. But I guess the question is, would it be a dual boot computer? Like, do you dual boot your iPad? Is it just one OS and then get rid of iPadOS? I mean, Big Sur can run iPad and iPhone apps on it. Like, we're getting really close. And with the unified architecture, all those Pro Suite apps can now run on the theoretically can run on the iPad. And there's nothing to stop macOS from being able to run on the iPad except for maybe RAM and Apple stubbornness.
Yeah, I mean, we won't know until they do it. I mean, I feel like it would be more, you know, we're just throwing speculation, just throwing our ideas around. We're not making the decisions. But, you know, the iPad looks like it's going to be its own thing, but it really feels like the Mac is the thing that, you know, I'm not saying it's stagnated, but they basically merged macOS and iOS together with Big Sur. So do they push us to finally if you just give us basic touchscreen, pinch and zoom, scrolling, and then selecting, that's all, you know, just give it a little. Because we've seen all these different form factors. We've played with Windows Surfaces, which are at least right now the best kind of hybrid implementation. But everyone has always said, like, hey, have Apple do it their way. And now we finally see those first kind of breadcrumbs that it could happen 2 years, 3 years, 1 year.
Here's what I think is going to happen. And I was going to save this video on my channel, but I'm going to drop it here.
You're still going to do your video because they're badass.
But so I think Apple's been dropping the hints for a while on what's happening. So look at the iPad Pro and the Magic Keyboard. Part of the things that made the Surface Pro line so good was the hinge, right? The hinge was really good, and it made those form factors possible. Apple has an amazing hinge on the $350, $300, whichever size you get Magic Keyboard. Hinge is amazing. And as you tap on that screen, it's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
But the downside of that is it's got to be reliant on the magnets for the smart connector to hold the screen in place. If you took that form factor with an iPad essentially on top and some of the processor in the keyboard, I think you're going to have the tenements of what's going to be either new MacBook or MacBook Pro. And I think that's what it's going to be, and it will be a touchscreen experience. I think for Apple to not embrace a touchscreen is foolish. I mean, Windows,
yeah,
and since Windows 8 essentially when they went sort of all in on the touchscreen, that's where the industry is going. And Apple is usually very slow to move towards industry trends. Then they jump in both feet when they do it. And I really believe that that's what we're going to see come as that new form factor I hinted at in a few years.
Was there a piece of hardware that you really wanted to see at this keynote, just you personally, that you just didn't get? I know AirTags are bugging you.
You kind of.
I care less about it. I just want to stop talking about it. New iMac. iMac. That iMac design, I believe, is about 10 years old at this point. My
2012, I think, or so is when the slimmer one came out.
It's old and busted at this point, and the iMac Pro is laughable. I would have liked to have seen a new design. They have an amazing design language with the Pro XDR display. I was really hoping for something new with the iMac.
Well, maybe by the end of the year, what they might. I mean, look, fall October. It's going to be a bonanza of stuff. I mean, they've lined up, all the cards are in place for us to get a pretty wicked fall season, holiday season.
No, I agree. What about you? Is there something you wanted to see hardware-wise that they didn't do? Or?
I mean, I'm 100% on board with you with the iMac or iMac Pro. I was almost going to call them iMac Pro because you just think of the idea of this like big screen iMac. I just want to see. I'm really more curious about the Apple Watch. I mean, it's really. I'm not expecting to see any big changes from it, but damn, if they could give us just at least 2 days of battery life, I think it would be a huge thing, right? We saw small things like what they did with the iPhone 11 Pro. All of a sudden, they maxed up the battery life, and everyone's like, this is amazing. I love the iPhone again. It took us by surprise. They have this whole sleep tracking with the Apple Watch. From all indications, people that are using it, it is not nearly as in-depth as the sleep tracking you get on the Fitbit. And I was wondering about that too, because when Apple presented it, they were kind of more presenting it as, hey, we want to get you on a good sleep schedule. Here's the hours you slept. But they didn't talk about, if it detects if you were a heavy sleeper, light sleeper, REM cycle, none of that. And all indications that for whatever reason, whether it's a hardware thing or not, it doesn't do that, at least in the first iteration. And so even if they're pushing this whole sleep watch function, you got to get at least 2 days of sleep because you're going to miss sometimes and not plug it in. You need to get through that day because most of the time, I don't know about you, when I use my Apple Watch, if I don't plug it in that night, it typically dies in the first few hours the next day. And then I'm like, okay, forget it.
Absolutely. I agree. I'd be curious what they do for the next version. So battery life or faster charging, I think could solve those problems. And it's very clear that sleep tracking is not meant for the Series 5, right? It's cool they did it, how they did it with no new hardware, but it's very obvious that's going to be an emphasis with Series 6, as well as some, a lot of health stuff, probably like blood oxygen monitoring and stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you think overall? I feel like, because you and I are kind of old school from our love and kind of our following of Apple, and we go way back. And for people that haven't seen John's videos, you've done some, amazing quality storytelling production, kind of the what ifs with Apple and other companies. And, I think I've been really like, just as a viewer, as a fan, as a peer, as a friend, just to see how when you've transitioned over to just be like, you know what, I'm sticking back to video. You're like, I'm gonna enjoy this storytelling stuff, and it shows, bro. It shows.
Thank you, man. There was times during the Techno Buffalo days where I was doing so many things I wasn't doing anything well. I don't know why. I never really wanted to run a website, but I ended up creating a website. It was mostly because, honestly, so when I started doing video, YouTube wasn't really a thing yet. It was mostly cat videos and guys getting hit in the balls. Mostly what YouTube was. And so I reached out to a lot of the big tech sites, and I was like, listen, CNET included, like, hey, I think video is going to be a really big thing. Let me do video for you. I was like 23 at the time, and nobody got back to me. And I was like, I'm going to do it myself. My liberal arts degree and no business background.
Yeah, baby.
So I created the website, and it ended up being about 90% of my headache and aggravation, 4% of my revenue. And video is always what I loved, but I was so worn down that the video started to suck. And there's a couple of years of video that I'm just not proud of. So something had to give. And it was a tough decision. So I started kind of shopping the site, and I had offers to sell everything and go work for companies essentially, or sort of split it off was my first hope and just sell the website and let me get back to video, which is ultimately what I decided to do. And it's been fun to focus on video again, to sort of focus on storytelling. Like you said, we've been around for a while. I think our perspectives are unique. I've got an original iPhone unboxing on my channel from when that came out. Like,
damn,
we go, we go way back. So I think that's kind of the advantage that I've seen trends change. And so sort of telling the stories has been a lot of fun. Sort of the passion and love that I always had for video, I can now show and do, and sort of working with people who are incredibly talented to sort of help me craft those stories has been really awesome.
Thanks again to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. If you use the internet, then you need private internet access. Whether you use it to stream, torrent, or just browse, a VPN subscription from Private Internet Access will hide your IP address and location, block ads, malware, and trackers, and it will even unblock geo-restricted content so you can stream your favorite shows wherever you are in the world. It's a must-have for my devices, and trust me, I have a lot, but fortunately, Private Internet Access lets you connect up to 10 devices at the same time and has apps available for Mac, iOS, Linux, Android, and Windows. Best of all, it's backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee, and they offer 24/7 technical support just in case you ever need it. They're also one of the only VPN services with a no logging policy that has been verified in court, so you can rest easy knowing that they've got your back. Don't wait another second. Sign up for Private Internet Access now and get up to 2 months free using the link in the description. If you also want more privacy-related content, check out the Privacy News Online hosted by yours truly in the link below. It's really great stuff. We're gonna come back to you in a second. Because our brains are hopping around a sec. I didn't finish my actual question because I was like so happy to talk about your video. But the question the question was that as you and I are old heads, Apple heads, and we've seen the evolution, the ups and downs, I felt like 2019 was the year where they'd clearly heard some of the backlash and frustration from fans, and all of a sudden they started kind of coming back to basics. It was like, we're going to fix the keyboard. We're going to give you an iPhone with battery life. They started hearing the things that we were screaming about the most and started going towards it. Did you feel that change, or maybe not? But I feel like Apple is kind of under the Tim Cook regime, because it's totally different than the Steve Jobs regime. They've taken what Tim Cook and, margin, supply chain, optimize profits on all levels. But now I've kind of come back at least to satisfy those Mac users. The Mac Pro, although I don't own one, is finally satisfies those pro users that wanted to love them, but were mad at them.
I absolutely agree. I think it's been a very self-aware year for Apple. Actually, I think that culminated with their WWDC earlier in the week. I mean, to sort of point out the shortcomings of iOS very clearly. I thought was a rare instance of real sort of self-realization. Yeah, we know you don't want to scroll through 7 pages of apps. Like, we're going to try to solve that. Yes, we know our home screen hasn't changed since 2007. We're going to change that. And I think that continues the trend you talked about. The keyboards and Mac Pro. Apple's clearly been listening, which is a very, I guess, a different direction, for Apple.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad. I just wanted to get that answer because people are going to be like, wait, you were going to ask him a question, but then you didn't ask him a question. Now you're going to ask him a question. Okay, we're good. Now,
good. I'm all over the place, so fire away.
We're all over the place. So, we were talking about you as a creator, and, I find your journey really, really interesting because, I used to work for a big publication. I transitioned over to independent creator. You've been an independent creator, basically run a publication, sold the publication, and went back to indie. So and followed your heart, right?
And worked for really big MCNs throughout that time too.
See, this is a question that I'm curious about. I've always been approached by MCNs, but I've never jumped on because I look at my growth. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm okay right now, at least with my trajectory. I'm just 2 years in or so.
Yeah, I mean, so right now it's not worth it at all. I mean, I think some MCNs at least are borderline predatory. But back 9 years ago, it was a different story. And I was with an MCN for years, and they paid me a guaranteed dollar amount each month, and I just budgeted for that. But it also kind of messed me up in the head because I didn't know what my value was on the open market. I didn't know what the value was per video because I never had to sell each individual video. So that was really interesting.
Because now and you're doing some great stuff, man.
Thank you. So I mean, it was interesting to sort of see how that how that industry has changed, and sort of running a publication, and kind of being, I don't want to say like being like the big bad guy with like writers and that kind of stuff, but like having to take on that role it's tough. When all I wanted to do was just make content. It was by my own design. I put myself in that position, and I felt the onus was on me to get myself out of that position.
You know, as a creator, a lot of people will see stuff. We'll get plenty of comments like, "Oh, what took so long?" Or people complain about things, right? And so and you're like, you have no idea. So my question for you, and this is probably different for different people, what is the thing that you would like to tell people who view your content that they may just not understand?
I love this
as
question.
a creator.
I love this question. So there are two things. The first one is so and so did this first. You know, like, okay, there's a lot of iPhone reviews. This is my opinion. And I think the biggest one that I always want to scream, and I always type the comments and delete it, is like when people scream clickbait. What people don't realize, and me, everybody online, we make our livelihood, everything depends on views. And on YouTube, the algorithm, it's a couple things. It's watch time and it's click-through rate. And the only two things we have to determine click-through rate are titles and thumbnails. So our sole job is to get people to click a video. So people scream clickbait. It's like, good job. Like, I got you to watch the video. Like, that's our job. Now, there's a fine line between like pretending you're going to talk about something and then don't, or pretending you have something that you don't. Like, that I understand the negative connotations to, but like, if I put out a good title and thumbnail, it gets people to click, like, that's my job. That puts food in my kid's mouth. Like, I'm good at that. If it gets my CTR above 10% for those first like 6 hours on YouTube, I'm thrilled. That's usually what I type and then like rage delete like a little bit later. Because it's infuriating. People just don't, and I don't get other industries either. Like, I don't know how the insurance industry works, so I probably have, similar misconceptions. But that's my big one. And also, people don't realize how long it takes to make content. So we make these videos, these really deep dives that take us like 3 weeks to make. And then they're like, oh, actually, 2 days ago, you're late. This came out. I'm like, this video, you don't make this video in a day, man. That's also a pet peeve.
No, I mean, because those are both so on point. I mean, honestly, and we know that it's a minority of people. Like, sometimes, right, look, I think the biggest thing that anyone can learn, and it depends on different fields of what you work like. So, for example, if you have ever worked in customer service or retail, you know what it's like when someone yells at you, and you might have had a bad day or something happen in your personal life, and this person who's just a customer decides to let all their shit on you, and you have to take it, and it affects them. And I really wish, in general, I can tell, it sounds weird, but I can tell the people who have basically worked in some sort of a service job or not, based on how they communicate with you on the internet.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. But it's tough being online. Like, people I think assume that we have really thick skin, and it's certainly gotten thicker than it has been over the years. But like, stuff still hurts. People don't see the work that goes into these videos, and then to like, pick it apart is sometimes discouraging.
What do you think? I feel like, so, being an independent creator, and then also especially with COVID coming around, I had a partner in crime that I work with sometimes. Now I don't at all, but it actually, in a weird way, has kind of pushed me more, right? It's like challenges you more. I know you have a group, and you guys aren't like shooting videos every day, but during the whole time you had to kind of take a break as well. How is it for you? You're kind of like I'm in the spot where I just kind of jumped on, even though I had a ramp up on my own, but I jumped in this independently. I look at you as kind of like 10 years ahead of me, per se, from a standpoint of being the indie. What have you learned in those 10 years? Because now you've grown to a point where you can actually support a team, which is a lot of pressure at the same time. Let's not be, say that there's not. But are there maybe some takeaways for you that you've been able to pull from all this?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first one is having employees, the responsibility that comes with that. I mean, of people relying on you for their livelihood. Something that is like I take that very, very seriously. It's times where like I'm sometimes don't pay myself a salary to make sure I can pay everybody else. And we can talk about sort of the COVID situation now. That's kind of changed your industry if you want. But I think that's what I've learned first and foremost. And sometimes that means doing video, and this is the honest answer, doing videos and maybe you don't want to do.
Mm.
And that sometimes sucks. You know, someone comes around and offers you a shit ton of money to talk about a vacuum in a video. I mean, my first job, I made $12 an hour. I made $24,000 a year was what I made. Someone's offering me more than a year's salary for a 5-minute video. It lets me pay my guys for 4 months. It's hard. It's hard to say no, and you're gonna find yourself in that position where sometimes you do say no. Sometimes you gotta do it, and it sucks, and it's managing that. Like, are you a sellout? Are you being responsible and taking care of your people and yourself? It's a real fine line to walk, and one that I've made a lot of mistakes doing it, and I think I'm finally gotten to a point now where I've wrapped my head around it a lot better than I ever have before.
Man, I first of all want to commend you for even talking about that topic like that, because that's when you said, "Oh, I'll keep it real with you," that is a real answer. I don't think many people will not say that. Like, I'm gonna do a video that I may not necessarily want to do. It's still, the key thing. It still matches with my audience and makes sense to that audience. But you are running a business, and they have, no one's gonna understand that. But that's I commend you for saying that, man. That's some real talk.
It's hard, especially in now, right? When things are all over. It's like, what do you do?
You
do you, right?
It's tough too. So, COVID's going on right now. And this is something I haven't really talked about publicly, but March was the worst revenue month I've ever had in the history of my business. Everything. I did everything exactly how I've been doing it. Deals completely dried up in March. Probably like a lot of people.
Yep.
I didn't pay myself a salary. I mean, it was just bad. April, we sort of come end of March, I reevaluated my whole business model, how I did business. April ended up being the best month I've ever had in the history of my business by almost a factor of 2, as far as deals that were signed. So it's always hard to find that balance, but also to look at, okay, things are really different now. Right? Like, I can't rely on a manager to always bring me deals. I got to be proactive for myself. And so that's been interesting transition to sort of kind of go back to how it was at the website and take on much more of the business responsibility, because I have staff and I got people that I have to pay, and I don't want to furlough. I don't want to cut salary. I want everybody to be able to keep living their lives. So that's been a dance for the past few months.
A lot of people, I know you've talked about this on your own podcast with Andrew Edwards, Gear Live. Y'all should check it out. About the number one question that we all get is, how do you freaking actually make money as a creator? And so
yeah, it's tough. So I can answer that. So for a lot of creators, it's a couple ways. If you look at like the giant guys, look at like Lou and Marquez, AdSense for them can easily be a primary revenue. I mean, there are millions and millions of views. They can more selectively pick and choose sponsors than maybe you or I can. But for the creators that aren't, Lou and Marquez and kind of guys that have achieved that level of success, and they certainly have earned it, it's usually a combination of AdSense, which is very inconsistent. That's the YouTube ads that you see, before a video or that pop up, and then it's sponsorships for a lot of it, and then secondary stuff like affiliates or those kind of things. Most of my revenue, AdSense is a nice extra every month. Most of my revenue comes from sponsorships. 95% comes from sponsorships. So being able to find those sponsors, negotiate those deals, make those videos, send them in for review, that's sort of where the money comes in. I know it's kind of an outdated analogy, but like a magazine, right? Got articles and you've got ads. It's the same thing. Or you have a TV show and you have commercial. It's kind of the same thing with YouTube.
Yeah, and I think also the other thing is that, like, AdSense is all over the place. Like, to your point, right? For me as a creator, I had to learn, like, look, you can't really plan, even with what you guys are doing, you cannot plan guaranteed how much money you're gonna make for the year, even a 6-month window. Maybe about, I don't know, I would say roughly maybe around 1 to 2 to 3 months ish. But beyond that, you don't know. You don't know, right? And so as being your own business person and, thank goodness, I was able to have some relationships early on that kind of helped me, and thank goodness I was able to at least build up a good enough audience at the moment to be able to still drive those type of deals. Otherwise, I don't know. I gave myself a 3-year window to do it, and right now I'm all okay. I'm still going to keep on pushing through. But for year one, I was like, this is not sustainable if it's going to be like this.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, people look at creators and they're like, it's the old South Park analogy, right? It's like step 1, do something. Step 3, profit. And people don't see the work that goes into step 2, and it's a lot of grind behind the scenes to keep things humming along.
So let me ask you this: we'll move away from the business. I think you've done a lot of videos. What have there been any highlights for you personally that you could think of that stand out to you? And maybe how about this? Let's do a highlight and a low light.
Yeah, I can do that. So I think the past 12 months have been some videos I've been really proud of. One video that I always wanted to do was an alternate history. What happens if? And we kind of did it like a studio. We produced what happens if Apple went bankrupt at different times in their history and explored how the industry would look. That video I am immensely proud of. Probably the most proud I've been on any video. And then the past 3 months, we've done 2 videos in this series where we take a really deep dive in the rise and fall of companies. And we did BlackBerry was our debut episode, and Windows Phone came out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Those I'm extremely proud of. We've got a couple other that we're working on that I'm really excited about. That's definitely the highlight of the videos that I've done over the past couple of years. And I mentioned that there's some videos that you walk a line about sponsorship and don't sponsorship. There were some videos during those Techno Buffalo days where I think I did some speaker review. Oh no, there was a video I did for a karaoke machine. And I was like, what am I doing with my life?
John, I would be the exact opposite of you. I'm like, yes, a karaoke machine.
But it was like, you could see just the life get drained out of my eyes. And there were some speaker reviews or speaker videos that I did that were sponsored that I really just didn't want to do. And that was my learning thing. Someone's like, here's some money. I was like, well, I need money. Someone's going to give it to me. Great. And then learning that maybe some things you should say no to, or probably mine. Do you have things that stand out for you?
Well, I mean, I feel like, how about this? It's hard because I've been only doing it for a little over 2 years right now. I don't find many lowlights because I'm in grind phase, right? Because, to get to a certain level, even for you to get to the level where you've been able to create these amazing videos, you have to put in the work, right? I think we talk about this. I know that I'm not trying to call out any specific generation, but there's certain people that don't realize this doesn't happen for 99.9999% of people. This doesn't happen overnight.
You're right. The grind, man. Also, just real quick, we had a video from WWDC that went up on trending on iOS 14. Super proud of that video. We had that video up before the keynote ended.
Really?
And I'm immensely proud of the team effort that it took to make that happen.
So was it kind of like you had already pretty much the style of the video? I didn't watch that one yet, but the style of the video was whatever they announced, it was still going to probably pretty much be on point or topical that you were like, okay, let's just do this, or what? What was the...
It was a combination of pre-filming, trying to get screen grabs during a recording, and then stepping in and filling in the gaps, correcting the mistakes, to sort of get that in and done. And we were the first video that went live, actually, with something Keynote in it. So that I'm immensely proud, just from a team standpoint.
See, that's the thing that, again, even if you have been established, that hustle mentality is in our DNA. If you've been in this business, you cannot not hustle.
I agree.
It is.
I mean, like you said, you and I are older. We've worked other jobs. I mean, I've worked jobs where I was the lowest person at an entire ad agency of 300 people. I worked at Hollywood Video. I know what it's like to work real jobs, and it makes me appreciate what I do more, and what an incredible blessing it is to do this for a living. And I know how tenuous it is. I don't want to lose it.
Yep. Absolutely. So, John, before we go, because you've been giving us so much great time, is there any, I'm a big foodie guy, and I know we can't go out and eat food.
True.
As maybe you can get pickup. It's not the same. But, do you have a certain food spot that, whether it's regional to you or maybe in a specific state or somewhere, and you said, hey, if you go here, you got to eat here, what would that be for you?
I mean, good. So, I mean, in California, I feel like the go-to answer is In-N-Out, right?
Maybe.
I'm not the biggest In-N-Out fan. There's a sushi place that's local that my family introduced me to that looks like it's straight out of the 1980s. The restaurant hasn't changed. It's called Taiko Sushi, and it's delicious.
Is it around where you live?
It is around where I live.
Okay, look it up, everybody.
Come down to Orange County once the world starts spinning normal.
No, I mean, the other thing we haven't talked about is the fact that you're moving into a new studio.
We are. So that's why I'm filming here.
I forgot to say
my bedroom. I should have let in with. Yes, we're filming in the studio, so all my gear is kind of en route to the studio, which is weird to try to plan during a pandemic.
I mean, that's got to be exciting. I mean, congratulations for getting to that point where you now have. How many rooms is it roughly? I saw some photos or something.
Yeah, so I think it's got 6 rooms, each one kind of be its own individual set and studio. But we've been filming out of my house. I'm like, I have 3 kids, and they were home from school because of the pandemic, and my wife is here. And my parents started construction on their house right before COVID hit, so they had to move out of their house into our house. They've been here for 6 months, and then I'm trying to film, so my poor wife has to take the kids out of the house for like 3 hours every other day so I can film. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable at all. So I expedited the studio space.
That's awesome. Well, John, I just want to say thanks so much for your time. It's always
good. Brian, always a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So we'll see you soon, and we can't wait to see the new studio and all that entails. I know it's a lot of work, bro.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it'll be fun. Maybe we'll get you down there. We can film some stuff together.
Love to come by, baby. Love to come by.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.